Good evening, everybody. Glad you're here with us. Welcome to the Palm Beach Church online midweek class. We are meeting. We've been meeting in person on Sundays. More on that at the end here tonight for what we're going to be doing this Sunday. But we've continued our online or at-home church for our midweek classes. And our series this month is entitled Proverbial Wisdom. In other words, the wisdom that we get from the book of Proverbs, the wisdom that Proverbs teaches us. And I started going on Proverbs chapter 1, talking about how, in verse 7, where it says, the fear of the Lord leads us to seek his wisdom. It, like everything else, it starts at the heart level. That fear of God, that desire to want to know God, to be right with God, that desire leads us on this path. And one thing I've said about Proverbs, here's what we've looked at so far. Proverbial wisdom teaches us to trust God. Secondly, proverbial wisdom teaches us to be righteous. And then I'm going to introduce the other ones in just a moment. But it's not that it tells us how to do it necessarily. It's leading us in that way. Proverbial wisdom is about teaching us this is the way that we should go. We should go in the way of trusting God, go in the way of being right, being in this right relationship with God and with others. It's teaching us the way that we should go. So today, we're going to look at another three topics, three themes here from the book of Proverbs. Proverbial wisdom teaches us not just to trust God and be righteous, but it teaches us to have a learner's heart. Proverbial wisdom teaches us to get advice. And proverbial wisdom teaches us to stay humble. Because to have a learner's heart, to get advice, we need to stay humble. So let's go ahead and start off there at have a learner's heart. Proverbial wisdom teaches us to have a learner's heart. You'll be looking at a slide now with some passages on there. And I'm going to go through these passages, and then, again, you can write them down. One of the things we hope to do is, again, to get us reading and thinking about Proverbs, not just as a bunch of cool sayings, but a book on how to seek after God's wisdom. So Proverbs 10. The wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool invites ruin. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. The heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out. Okay, what does proverbial wisdom teaches us? To have a learner's heart. I think about these three passages is describing the heart of somebody, the heart of a learner, the heart of someone that wants to learn, wants to grow. And I think, look, that's proverbial wisdom, and that's common sense for a lot of us. It's very hard to teach someone that doesn't want to learn. If you're at a job, and maybe it doesn't happen just at your job, but just in life. When you're trying to teach somebody something and they're constantly like, oh, yeah, I know. Oh, yeah, I know. I know how to do that. You don't want to teach that person. You want to just kind of let them go and say, okay, well, I'm here for when you need me. I think God does that in life. We're constantly like, oh, yeah, I got this. Oh, yeah, I know. I have a better, well, we don't say that to God, but when we make these choices, God's like, all right, go your way. I'm here for when you're ready. So proverbial wisdom is teaching us, man, have that heart. Have a learner's heart. And it says in Proverbs 10, the wise store up knowledge. The wise stores up. See, that's a learner's heart. It's someone who stores up knowledge. In other words, I don't know what comes to your mind, but again, I think about someone who's like, as they learn, they're storing it. They're putting it in their mind. They're learning things. They're making it a part of what they now know, and maybe it changes and it affects the way they now see people and see the world and see God. But they're constantly storing up knowledge. They're keeping it. They're not just A lot of times and I can't speak for it, it's just for me. I got to that point in college when I studied history, but you get, for me at least, in those last couple semesters, people ask me, "Oh, you study history? What are you studying?" Whatever's on the test. That's what I'm studying. It's like I'm just studying what's on the test. Yeah, I don't know how many of you guys can relate to me, or how many of you can relate to me. It's like, yeah, I got to that point where it's like I'm just studying what's on the test. I loved reading about history and studying history and talking about all the whys and all the debating and even the books that we read. But I got to that point where I'm just studying what's on the test. I'm not even looking to store this up. I want to graduate. And sometimes, man, we live life that way. I think, especially spiritually, sometimes we gain these little nuggets or we learn scriptures, but I think Proverbs is saying, no, you got to have a learner's heart stores it up. As we learn things, we store them. We're like, man, I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna keep this. The mouth of a fool says invites ruins. Kind of give you like the opposite again. It's pinning one picture against the other. You have the wise person who's learning, who's storing it up, and then you have the fool who's just talking. Proverbs 18:2, which we read, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but they delight in airing their own opinions. It's very hard to learn when you're constantly just talking about what you already know. It's hard to learn when you're constantly just talking about what you know, or you're airing your own opinions. The proverbial wisdom is have a learner's heart. Have a learner's heart. Be someone that doesn't just want to prove what they know, but be someone who, as it says in verse 15 of Proverbs 18, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out. See, and that's the learner's heart. It's not just I'm constantly trying to prove what I know, but I'm seeking out what I don't know. I'm not just trying to prove what I already know or trying to measure up. No. I'm the learner, the person with a learner's heart is the ears are seeking out. Wow, you know what? I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I'm going to go back and learn that. See, that's the learner's heart. I know for me, I would say, man, that's one of those things where I got to constantly, again, I said this about Proverbs. Proverbs is not like a pass or fail. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm not a learner then. That's not, it's not you read this and you're like, yeah, I'm definitely not a learner. It's telling us, okay, amen. Well, but be a learner. Be a learner. It's telling us the way we should go. It's not trying to measure where we're at so that we can feel like I'm passing or I'm failing. No, it's telling us the way to go. Because I read that, I'm like, man, I could easily be someone who's talking about what I think and my own opinions. That's more of who I am, as opposed to the person who's asking questions. And that's something that I'm constantly, challenging and need to challenge myself with. Ask questions. Don't be quick to talk. Don't be quick to jump in. Oh, that's what you think? Yeah, okay, let me tell you what I think. No, that's not a learner's heart. And again, I don't say, I say that to myself. That's not a learner's heart. And it keeps, and I talked about this when we talked about righteousness, how, the blameless life is the one where you're constantly repenting. To me, that's a blameless life. It's not, the perfection is what I'm pursuing. So the blameless life is one where we're constantly repenting. We're constantly repenting. We're struggling as we strive towards Jesus. And so I read these passages, and to me, again, I read this, I'm like, yep, that's not me. I'm more of the fool than the wise. But Proverbs says, okay, but this is the way to go. This is the way to go. We could all be the proverbial wise person. Have a learner's heart. And when I catch myself not having a learner's heart, I repent. I need to repent. And I need to look back and say, you know what? I didn't ask questions there. having that learner's heart is about asking questions, not just, well, here's what I think. It's learning that. It's learning to ask questions. The ears of the wise seek out knowledge. That's the phrase for me that I want to keep in my mind. The ears of the wise, they seek it out. Man, they seek out. I want to know more. I'm not just trying to show off what I know. You tell me what you know. I should tell you what I know. No, I want to have a learner's heart and seek out that knowledge. And the second thing I want to talk about tonight, the proverbial wisdom teaches us not just to have a learner's heart, but the proverbial wisdom teaches us to get advice. And I know sometimes we're like, we're afraid sometimes to get advice for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's out of fear, sometimes out of pride. Advice, as we read these passages, remember, they're not commands, it's advice. And it goes with the ears of the wise seek it out. But check out these scriptures. And there's a couple different screens on here. Let's go to the first one that has about 3 passages on there. I'll read these. Again, write these down. Proverbs 12:15. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Yeah, let's just stop there for a second, because that's the passage to me. Is like I kind of drill this in my head. Every time I am sure that my way seems right. I'm not saying that every time we think that is wrong. I'm just saying every time I find myself saying, man, but I think my way is right, I got to remember, like, you know what? You know who else always thinks their way is right? Fools. So sometimes your way is right. Sometimes my way is right. It just helps me to put a pause on it. You know, this passage helps me kind of put a pause on that and say, man, I think this is the way to go. I think this is the right decision to make. But what's the wise? The foolish person is convinced and moves forward. The wise person, it doesn't say that he doesn't move forward with his own plans, but the wise person kind of puts a pause and says, but let me listen to advice. Then I can make, again, at the end, you make the decision. And I will say this from a practical point of view, practical stance. The more important the decision, the more advice you should get. And the more important the decision, the more important it is to be your decision. So, and I know some of that might sound contradictory, but no, it's saying, look, get a lot of advice, but if it's important, make sure it's your decision. At the end, don't make a decision just because, well, so-and-so said this. Listen to so-and-so. In Spanish, it's fulano y fulana. I don't know. In English, we use that so-and-so, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. Listen to Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. Listen. That's what the wise person does. But after listening, you make a decision. The difference, again, is not that the wise person just does what the other person says, but the wise person listens to advice. Doesn't live just convinced that, oh, my way is right. No, let me listen. Let me put a pause and listen to advice. Can you put that screen back up? Proverbs 13, verse 10. Where there is strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. Now, when we looked at James 3, we talked about that, you know, the wisdom that comes from heaven, it's about peace. The wisdom that's earthly wisdom always causes strife. Where there's strife, there's pride. Wisdom is found in those who take advice. Man, what do you think? You see, that's what the wise person does. Instead of continually fighting their point, the wise person says, what do you think? And listens. Again, doesn't just ask, right? I know there are times where I could ask, but I'm still not really listening. Again, I got to catch myself because I don't want to be, I don't want to give in. It's not about not being arrogant. I don't want to give in to that arrogance. I don't want to give in to that pride. Proverbial wisdom says, man, this is the way to go. Don't give in to your pride, but listen to advice. Then Proverbs 15:22, if we could put that back up. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. With many advisors. And I know we're always looking for that. In the church, I feel like we're always in church, at least in our church, in our church culture, it's like we're always looking for that one person that we could always go to for all the questions, right? The person that could disciple us. That man, if or a lot of times we don't want to have a disciple relationship with somebody because we're like, well, but man, I don't think he's that great of a parent or of a dad or I know more of him. It's like we're looking for somebody that knows everything. It's like that's not the way. The proverbial wisdom has been have many advisors. You have someone who's mentoring you, or someone you have a disciple relationship, but you understand their strength and you understand their weaknesses. And the strength, get advice from that person. The things that aren't their strength, get advice from somebody else. Have many advisors. It says plans fail for lack of counsel. It's a friend who once said, you don't have to floss. He's a dentist. You don't have to floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep. That's true, right? I guess that's true. You don't have to floss them all, just the ones you want to keep. That's how advice is. You don't have to get advice on everything, just on the things you want to succeed in. That's it. If you don't care about it, then yeah, don't get advice. You don't have to get advice on everything. Only on the things you want to be successful in. Because a lot of times, plans fail for lack of counsel. Hey, every once in a while, we get it right. Every once in a while, the fool gets it right, and his way was the right way. And every once in a while, the fool has his day. But that's not the way to live, right? Proverbs is about, man, there's a better way to live. There's a better way to live than that. And that's by seeking counsel, having many advisors. Let's go to the next, Proverbs 19. I think it's another slide. You'll see two up here, 19 and 20. Proverbs 19:20 says, listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end, you'll be counted among the wise. Plans are established, in chapter 20, plans are established by seeking advice. If you wage war, obtain guidance. So listen to advice and accept discipline. If you're wrong, he says, again, Proverbs is not telling us when he says, as I talk about getting advice, he's not just saying, hey, just do it, or here's how you do it. It's the proverbial wisdom is teaching us the way to go. I said, look, here's the way to go. Just accept discipline. Accept when you're wrong. Accept the correction, so you get back in line. I've had to learn that correction and criticism. It's like as I'm on this road. This is my what he calls in the street. The guard. You guys aren't here, so I guess you can't help me out through the camera. But those guards as you're driving, if you get off the road and you hit that guard, you should get mad at the guard. In fact, that guard saves your life, right? It's like, whoa, wait, I went too far. And it's there to keep us from going off the cliff. That's what they're there for. And I know for me, I got to remind myself, see, correction and criticism, that's what it's there for. It's to let me know, dude, you've gone too far in this, with this person or this relationship or with my words or whatever. Correction and criticism, when I start looking at it that way, then again, I'm not mad at it. I learned to accept it. Like it says here, accept it. It's like, okay, I'm grateful for it. It keeps me from going off the cliff. And like I said in Proverbs 19, and at the end, see, listen to advice. Can we go back to that Proverbs 19 a second? Listen to advice, accept this one, and at the end, you'll be counted among the wise. This is why that proverbial wisdom, these proverbs, they're teaching us the way to go. It's not about you're a loser if you're not doing this way or you have failed. No, it's just telling us, look, there's a way to go. And if you live this life where you listen to advice, where you accept discipline, at the end, then you'll be wise. Again, but at the end, on the way there, man, it's all kinds of struggles. Right? As we strive towards that wisdom, there's all kinds of struggle. But the way of the righteous is a blind, the righteous live this blameless life. Again, constantly repenting, constantly getting back on track. And if I'm able to live this way, if I decide that the Proverbs are not just these cool sayings, but an actual way to live, advice on how to live and appreciate the wisdom of God, or how to live by God's wisdom. When I start applying that at the end, he says, then at the end, you'll be counted among the wise. So proverbial wisdom teaches us to have a learner's heart, right? To be someone who wants to learn. Proverbial wisdom teaches us to get advice. And lastly, proverbial wisdom teaches us to stay humble. Because you're not going to have a learner's heart. None of us. We're not going to have a learner's heart, and we're not going to get advice if we don't stay humble. Again, notice, I'm not saying be humble. I'm just saying stay humble, because most of us aren't humble naturally. So it's about staying humble. Staying humble. I think a few Sundays ago I mentioned about, when we get God, when we really get God, it helps us to stay humble. Getting God is not about getting down on ourselves. It's like, oh man, I'm so far from God. No, it's about seeing how great God is. It's like, man, I want to know more. Man, I want to know more about God. I want to be more like him, because again, his ways are so much greater than my ways. His wisdom is so much greater than my ways. His love, so much greater. God is perfect. Everything about God is so much greater. And as we get that, we're able to stay humble. Stay humble. Proverbs 11. Can you put that slide up? We have a couple different slides here. Proverbs 11, verse 2. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom. And Proverbs 18:12, before a downfall, the heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor. The world, I think, has it's a different take on humility. Right? I think a lot of times we think humility is about thinking less of myself. Humility is not about thinking less of yourself. Humility is about thinking about yourself less. Right? That's humility. Humility is not about lacking confidence. Humility gives us confidence. Think about, there's no one more humble than Jesus, right? He's perfect. He's humble, and yet he was confident. And so I think real humility makes us confident, because real humility, I believe, is what leads us to God. And as talked about last Wednesday, one of the Proverbs on righteousness, the righteous, they can be bold as a lion. When I'm trusting in God and I'm right with God and I'm allowing him to lead me, and I'm living my life, certainly striving to live my life by his wisdom, by his way, by his will, I can be confident. But that takes humility. That's saying God knows more. God's perfect, I'm not. God knows and I don't. But with pride comes disgrace. With pride, when the heart is prideful, downfall is not far off. Humility brings honor. Proverbs 22, we could put that up. Humility is the fear of the Lord. Its wages are riches and honor and life. Pride brings a person low, but the lowly in spirit gain honor. Those passages there, think about, because the first Wednesday I start off talking about how proverbial wisdom teaches us trust God. And that's because, man, everything is on that basis. It's about trusting God. Because if not, how, the world is the opposite. People don't see as humility as something that you gain honor that way. You gain honor by proving that you're better, by showing that you're better. That's how you gain honor. And the Bible has a different path. Proverbial wisdom has a different path to honor. It says, you know what the path to honor is? Staying humble. Staying humble. Pride is going to eventually, it's going to bring the person low. But those that are lowly in spirit, those who are humble and realize, man, not just my need for God, but I want God, because God is perfect. God is greater. His ways, his will, his wisdom are greater than mine. He says that's the way to gain honor. But there's got to be a trust in God. Humility is the fear of the Lord. Again, not a fear of I'm scared of God, but a fear of reverence toward God. And when we get God, we get humble. Not humbled, but humble. Because we realize how great his glory is. Humility is the fear of the Lord. So what does the proverbial wisdom teach us? It teaches us to trust God. Proverbial wisdom teaches us to trust God. Trust his way, his wisdom, trust his will, trust God. Proverbial wisdom teaches us to be righteous. Be in this right relationship with God, which is then reflected in your relationship with others. Go that way in this relationship with him. Proverbial wisdom teaches us to have a learner's heart. Don't just be eager to show off what you already know, but have this, what does the Proverbs say, like the wise, their ears seek knowledge. Live that way. Always seeking to grow, wanting to learn, wanting to know. Proverbial wisdom teaches us to get advice. At the end, we make our own decisions. It's not just about taking commands, but proverbial wisdom says, get advice. I mean, I'm sure when you think that you're always right, yeah, so do fools. I mean, everybody always thinks that. Get advice. Proverbial wisdom teaches us, stay humble. Stay humble. Because without that humility, we're not going to have a learner's heart. We're not going to get advice. Stay humble. Stay humble before God, and he will lead us into the path, like it says here, into this life of honor. We'll be back next Wednesday, and we're going to continue with our series here of Proverbial Wisdom. Proverbial Wisdom teaches us to choose wisely and to watch our tongue. We'll cover that next Wednesday. By the way, this Sunday, we're not going to meet at our usual place. Instead of having Sunday service, we're having Service Sunday. So we're encouraging everybody this weekend to serve in the community. You could join a group that's already serving, a local group. You could serve somebody that you know, maybe somebody in your neighborhood, somebody in your family, not in your home, but maybe there's someone who's elderly who doesn't get a lot of visits, and you go visit. I mean, think through the different ways, and you communicate with your small group, see how you'll meet on Sunday. We will have a service here online, same YouTube and Facebook channel. But let's have a weekend where we are thinking about others and practicing our serve. And next Wednesday, we'll be back with our series on proverbial wisdom. Until then, good night. God bless.